So we have Dr. Thompson, and she is a triple certified physician in lifestyle, integrative, and osteopathic family medicine. She currently serves in the medical director for the Lifestyle Medicine Institute at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. She's vice chief of staff for UPMC Horizon and Jameson, and is a member of the NWI Advisory Council. In addition to her work at UPMC, Dr. Thompson created Doctors in the Kitchen, which is a food as medicine and physician wellness program. A program is designed that is offering and continuing medical education for her colleagues to learn about self-care and lifestyle medicine. An advocate for systems change and a pioneer in changing the way that healthcare is delivered, Dr. Thompson has transformed the way that healthcare is offered in her primary care practice and community by offering classes in nutrition, teaching kitchens, mindfulness workshops, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, sound therapy, art therapy, forest bathing, shop with a doc, aromatherapy, dancing mindfulness, Ayurveda, mind-body medicine, and many other integrative tools empowering people to take control of their health. A featured contributor for the New York Times, she has received many awards and grants for her work. And I'm really excited today because that is only really like a third of her bio. And she's going to talk a little bit more about how she really works in the wellness space and how she got here, which I think is going to be really powerful for a lot of you that are with us and have had really unique and exciting journeys into the field. And with that, I would like to welcome Dr. Thompson, and I'll let you take it away.
I'm so excited to be here with you. So thank you so much for, showing up and spending an hour with me of your day. I know that I have several people that I know that are involved in NWI and are excited to be here today sharing in this activation of sustainable change and the key to living your healthiest life. So we're just going to start off quickly. Actually, now I can't advance my slides again. Suzanne, what happened? Hold on.
I can actually pull them up for you if it's easier that
Can
way.
you? Yeah, I think so. I think so because I'm not sure what's happening. So I'll stop share as she's doing that. So thank you for your patience. Nobody ever taught me all this technology stuff, and I never really thought that this was going to be part of my life. So I'll just start to tell you, I changed my own diet, exercise, lifestyle in 1992 when I became a mom. And the reason I did that is because I thought to myself, wow, I'm going to be bringing this human being into the world, and I want to take good care of myself so that I can be around for him. And plus, I want to teach him a good, healthy way of living. And so I just felt like it was the right thing to do to really look inward and try to really dig deep into the way I was caring for myself. My grandfather died at age 36 of diabetes. He essentially ate himself to death. And that is something that I think that we didn't have education and awareness about that back in the day, but we definitely have that now. And so that's really why I am such an avid educator, because I believe everybody deserves the knowledge to be able to make changes in their own life before they're placed on medication. In 1998, I ran a massage therapy school. I was the medical director of Great Lakes Institute of Technology while I was in medical school. And that's where I really started digging into some of this integrative modalities and teaching nutrition and things like that. I went to Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, came out, did my family medicine residency at UPMC Mercy in Pittsburgh, and they were so supportive of allowing me to do integrative and alternative. Back then we called it alternative and complementary, but now we call it integrative, and letting me do electives in that arena. And so when I came out in 2006, I gave my first lecture in reversing diabetes and diet exercise, and with diet exercise and lifestyle changes to my community. And really people wanted to throw tomatoes and eggs at me, right? They were like, who is this girl? What is she talking about? And where is she coming from? I had endocrinologists essentially call me and say, you need to stop doing this. And so, I just plowed forward. And so one of the big things that I hope to instill in you today is just to do what's right, even if it feels uncomfortable at times. Do what you think is right for your clients, for your patients, for your people, for your families, because I think that it's really important. You're going to have a lot of naysayers around that, people that aren't supportive of this work. And so I really started doing more of these community programming in 2016, because as I was in my practice, people were waiting a year to see me and they couldn't get in. And I felt like, how am I going to help the community? And so I did my first program, and I had 75 people that showed up, and then they said, please do more. And then I had upwards of 150 people showing up, and really just teaching all the things that Suzanne talked about with all the different integrative modalities. And my belief is that we can't really necessarily tell somebody what they have to do. We need them to feel it, right? We need them to know that this food tastes good and that they feel better once they eat these things. And they're much more relaxed when they actually do deep breathing and things like that. And, you know, yoga and Tai Chi and all the programs that I did were designed for people of all ages, all shapes and sizes, including in a wheelchair. If you could breathe, you can show up. And that's always my philosophy, is that as long as you have your breath, there's more right with you than wrong with you, and you have the ability to make a change. And so, you know, trying to not look back at the past and where we've been, but and not really like worrying about the future, but being in this moment and knowing that in this moment, we do have control of some things in our own lives, despite what's going on in that world around us. And I noticed after I was doing all these programs for the community in 2017, I had physician colleagues die of suicide and also not taking good care of themselves. And I'd walk by and they'd say, there's, you know, I'm eating a cookie. There's Dr. Thompson, hide your cookie. And I was like, gosh, we need to really start to talk to the doctors, right? Because I don't know that the doctors have a good understanding of, you know, no shame, no judgment on the plate, creating healthy relationships with food, thinking about their own lifestyle as they actually go and they sit and they talk with patients. So that's when I started to create physician well-being programs, as well as the doctors in the kitchen, where we actually just go in the kitchen together. We cook, they eat, they try the food, and they realize that good food, real food does taste good. So next slide, please. And so I really got involved with Kelly, who is here today with NWI, and started doing nutrigenomics, pharmacogenomics, mind-body medicine in 2018. That's really where I started to dig in further as food as medicine, nutritional psychiatry, and trying to really get to the science behind the, you know, food as medicine movement, and really weaving culinary medicine into my hospital, into my patient care, into my medical students, into my residents. And I really do think that it's important that we practice mindful medicine or mindfulness in all of our spaces, because that's really how we can create sustainable change. I really am a yogi. I've been practicing yoga for 20 plus years, 30 years maybe. And I bring that into my medicine arena as well. And then I created my own website, Wholehearted Medicine, where I have a lot of resources that you can go on there that are free, shop with a doc, and, you know, sound therapy and mind body medicine, things like that. In 2020, I was trying to think about how we could create more change in a faster way, because I'm only one human being. I created a pop-up teaching kitchen that really was just a suitcase that moved out into the community. And I gave this suitcase to one person every day. These were not people that were trained in nutrition. They were, you know, just a lay person that had a circle of people around them. And actually, I think there's somebody here from Go Pivot that was part of this, and there's another health coach that is probably present today that was part of this. And people took this to their different communities. And each day, this teaching kitchen was really just teaching about the daily dozen and how could we just tell people the 12 healthy things that they could do in their day and start to create change in their circles around them. Because it's not just, it doesn't need to come from a physician or a health coach or a dietitian or, you know, somebody of that has training. It really can come from just a champion in our community that supports eating healthy food and thinking about their food as their fuel. And what I noticed when I created this and this kitchen was moving every single day, it really made change in 1,000 people in 1 month, which was way more than I could affect in my own teaching kitchen, which we could only really get to about 150 in 1 month. So I encourage you to just think outside of the box and how you can create these changes in these circles. It went to the police department, the fire department, to churches, to businesses, to doctors' offices, and really anywhere that anybody wanted to participate. And they just taught people about the Daily Dozen, the app that they could log into. In 2020, also at UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, we adopted the lifestyle medicine residency curriculum, where we put front and center into our family medicine training, which is 180 medical residents a year in family medicine. They have the ability to learn lifestyle medicine and graduate being able to be dual boarded in family medicine and lifestyle medicine. So that's really exciting. I'm overseeing that program. I have residents and medical students with me every day virtually of my life. And then I got certified in mind body medicine throughout the pandemic, because really, as we entered the pandemic, there was a global trauma that happened to each and every one of us. And I was noticing that as my patients had been very well controlled prior to the pandemic, some of them were really just going off the rails, right? And what was happening was that there was childhood trauma that was being reactivated, and I wanted to understand more. So I got certified in through the Center for Mind Body Medicine, and really just started digging into trauma informed care and how we could look at creating these changes in patients, that we really could think about not why they're doing what they're doing, but what did their family teach them and what has happened to them along the way? Not what's wrong with them, but what really has led to this. And so in 2022, I accepted the position of Medical Director of Lifestyle Medicine Institute at UPMC. We actually are doing a whole hospital system change of 93,000 employees. And we're really putting lifestyle medicine front and center. We're part of the White House Hunger Campaign, where we got 10,000 licenses in food as medicine and intro to lifestyle medicine free for our employees, so that we can create sustainable change in our employees, as well as, all areas, nurses and respiratory therapists, occupational therapists, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, anybody that we can really give these courses to create change throughout our system. Next slide, please. And so what this brings us into today is our learning objectives. We're going to talk about prominent dietary patterns and the impact nutrition has on disease management, and also recognizing the benefits of nutrition for disease prevention and elevating our physical wellness. We're going to outline these strategies and how we can create and activate healthy and sustainable lifestyle change. Next slide, please. Why this is really important to me that we do sustainable change is because at one point, again, people are going to have their life shaken up, and we're going to need to give them changes that feel good to them, that they can come back to, that they feel good in their roots. So with that, I like to start everything I do with a little bit of breathing. And so I invite you, if you would like to, if you're in a safe space and you would like to close your eyes, go ahead and do that. And if not, maybe just softly gaze at the floor or somewhere out in front of you and come into your breath for a moment. Breathing in slowly and deeply, in through your nose, all the way to the top of your head. And letting it out through your mouth, all the way to the bottom of your feet. Continuing to breathe slowly and deeply, in through your nose and out through your mouth at your own pace. Maybe placing one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly if that feels comfortable. And if not, maybe just hands up if you'd like to receive and hands down if you'd like to ground. But really just feeling your chest rise as you breathe in and your belly expand as you breathe out. Letting go of any thoughts of the past, anything that already happened today. Not thinking about what you need to do when you leave here, but really just thinking about this moment. Knowing again that as long as we have our breath, there's more right with us than wrong with us. And as long as we have our breath, we have the ability to make a change in our own lives and the lives of those around us. Continuing to breathe slowly and deeply, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Thinking soft as you breathe in, belly as you breathe out. Maybe noticing the quality of the air as it goes in through your nose and out past your lips. Knowing that as long as we have this breath is the ability to connect with each other. We all share this common humanity. And we can use this breath, even if we don't have power of and control of what's going on in the world around us, we have control of our breath, and we can use that to help us. And on these last few breaths, maybe as you breathe in, noticing your breath for the very first time today, or maybe in your lifetime. And as you're breathing in, sending yourself some love and kindness and compassion and peace and hope and faith, gentleness as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, maybe sending that to all of those around us on our planet. Thoughts come, let them come, and let them go, gently bringing your mind back to soft belly. It's in the mind's nature to wander. And when you feel ready, and only when you feel ready, if your eyes are closed, softly blink them open. maybe looking around the room and coming back to this space. And so when we do that, we move ourselves from sympathetic fight or flight nervous system into parasympathetic rest and digest. And it's really important that we learn to utilize that sense of peace and calmness, because as today we're talking about nutrition, we may have the most perfect diet in the whole wide world, but if we're running around in a stressed state, we can still have disease ensue. And we can also not absorb our nutrients, because we know in parasympathetic nervous system, that's where we rest and digest our food. And so if you're living in sympathetic, that stressed state, you're never able to get to that space of relaxation and absorption of your nutrients and true digestion. And so a lot of the disease processes I see along the way, people have a great diet, they have a wonderful support system, but their insides, and this is where the trauma comes front and center, their insides are just constantly tense and tight, and they're not able to actually relax and digest their food. And so we're going to talk later about mindful eating. If you have something with you today, keep one little piece of something or a drink with you that we'll do a mindful eating exercise at the end. Next slide, please. So I asked you to consider, what is the state of your plate? We all have 3 to 5 chances a day to eat and think about our own plate and help those around us that we're helping with theirs. And we all have choices to make. I really want to dig in and make sure that what I leave you with today is the understanding that we don't want to create food addiction, and we also don't want to create food fear in people. Again, no judgment, no shame about the state of somebody else's plate. Just maybe, go with curiosity about why they're doing what they're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. Next slide, please. And so as we start to move through this talk, I want to share with you that nutrition is so individual, and really what we need to think about in our own selves, as well as the people that we work with, is considering our family, our personal history with diet and nutrition, considering our own relationships with food. How does lifestyle medicine have an impact on nutrition? And really, how are we going to help ourselves and help those around us? I tell my patients, I can't care more about your health than you do. And really, I start to help them think about why they're doing what they're doing, the who, what, where, when, why of eating, right? And so I also tell them that we all can't wear the same eyeglasses. So though I may eat a certain way, Suzanne may not like that way, and Kelly may not like that way. And that may not work for them. And so I want you to all think about, and one of the things I share with my patients is that I can't take my eyeglasses off and give them to you and expect you to drive down the road. And so I'm going to really explore that personal relationship that they have and honor that, and see how we can use that so that they have control of their fork, and they have control of their diet and their healthcare. And I say diet loosely, right? Because it's a lifestyle change. And I don't use the word diet thinking I'm going to put people on a diet for a short period of time. It's, again, their relationship with food and helping them to become an intuitive eater and what feels right in their own body. And so I do tell my patients the quote, food can be the safest and most powerful form of medicine, or the slowest form of poison. And no disease that can be treated with diet, exercise, and lifestyle really should get a pill. And so when we start to think about nutrition, I just try to help them move the needle in the direction of eating real food. I think at the end of this today, we can all agree that we need to eat real food. We need to eat foods that are grown. We need to eat foods that aren't processed. We need to have foods that are going to give us colors, the colors of the rainbow, to give us the vitamins and nutrients and phytonutrients that we need to protect us from disease or help to reverse disease if that's the case. And I always think about, a lot of times we have people that come to us that are really, inflamed, and they have a lot of problems. And what's going on in those bodies is the body's on fire. And it's on fire for several reasons. We're going to talk about why, but that inflammatory process when the body is on fire can be put out. So think about the campfire in the backyard when there's just a little bit of a fire and it's just blazing a little bit, just a little bit, but we throw gasoline, that fire just goes ablazing again. And so what we're trying to do in people that have disease is we're trying to put out the fire. And so we can do that really by helping them to make changes that give them control and recreate their compost pile of their bodies, right? The microbiome. We're talking about Years ago, when I started all this, the microbiome was like woo woo, but now there really is tons of information out there about microbiome. And so what we're doing with our microbiomes is, if you think about the compost pile in the backyard, you're going to throw things like your carrots and your red peppers and your, stems from your blueberries, different things like that. But you're not going to throw a hamburger from McDonald's. You're not going to throw French fries. You're not going to throw a steak. You're not going to throw things that won't, you know, resorb into the pile and create a nutritious soil. And so I explain it in really just simple terms so that they can understand that we really are just trying to create little changes along the way. And it doesn't take them to do a big thing that they have to just switch everything overnight. When we do things like that, we create overwhelm. And so even if they just make the next bite count along the way, that's very helpful for them. Next slide, please. And so the American College of Lifestyle Medicine is an amazing organization, which we're going to talk about. I'm actually a fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and I've been involved with them since I think 2018. But we started off with just a few members, and now we have 10,000 physicians and dietitians and health coaches of people across the world. But the philosophy, the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine are: eat plant, keep moving, sleep well, be present, stay calm, and love people. And we know that we have to look at all these pillars, because if we don't manage sleep, then a person doesn't feel well, and they don't want to make good choices, and they don't want to get up and exercise, and they don't want to connect with others. They may grab a glass of wine for stress reduction instead of go to their yoga mat or go for a walk with a friend. And they really don't care to eat healthy and cook because they're just tired. And so, I used to think that, diet was everything, but really I start to dig into sleep first and foremost. And also, thinking about surrounding people with their positive relationships around them too, that can help them to stay on track. And so next slide, please. So as we start to look at this, and I'm so excited that so many people are involved with the National Wellness Institute, because what we're seeing is our Health Systems Council at American College of Lifestyle Medicine has gone from no hospitals really involved to 85 hospital systems across the country that are really involved. Next slide, please. And so as you can see this next slide, these are all the major hospital systems that have made a commitment to look at lifestyle medicine, putting it somewhere in their system, somewhere in their employee health, somewhere in their resident training program, just somewhere. And this is fantastic to see. And I'm very proud that I'm leading the charge at UPMC. Many years ago, I never thought I would see this in my lifetime. And now I'm just so excited every day. There are physicians and health coaches and occupational therapists and respiratory therapists and physical therapists that really want to put those 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine front and center in the way that they do their patient care, and dietitians as well, if I didn't say that. Next slide, please. So also, as we looked at that, if you didn't see your organization on there, reach out, because we are more than welcoming all hospital systems to be part of this movement. And why? Because we need lifestyle medicine now more than ever. These unhealthy lifestyle behaviors are really at the root of the global burden of non-communicable diseases and account for about 83% of all deaths. Poor diet is actually the leading cause of poor health in the US and the root cause of 500,000 deaths per year. And only 5% of the adult population of the US practice all those positive lifestyle measures and can reduce the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. Next slide, please. And what we see with all of this is that this lifestyle modification can cultivate change. And so unhealthy diet, sedentary lifestyle, high stress, and medications leads to microbiome dysbiosis. It leads to oxidative stress. It leads to cellular injury, again, leading to that chronic inflammation, that body on fire that we talked about earlier, that compost pile that isn't nutrient rich and robust, then further leading to diseases like obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and depression and anxiety. And so these are the steps to pathogenesis of inflammation that lead to the progression of chronic disease. So what's most exciting is we can stop this disease from ever happening if we educate, we empower, and we teach people to do it right without having to reverse this disease. Next slide, please. But we also know that once they do have disease, that we can reverse that disease by, again, giving them control of their healthcare, control of their fork, and control of the way they show up, and teaching them that this is something that as a society, we should be asking for. We really should be teaching physicians how to to take care of disease without medications first, right? So physicians are taught to do no harm, but what they're not taught is nutrition. And so that is changing. That is changing in medical school. That is changing in attending physicians, residency programs. And so, I'm excited about that wave of that future. So in traditional diets in the US, we're going to talk about unhealthy diet is the leading cause across the globe of death, and contributes to 678,000 deaths a year in the US. And a third of the population is overweight or obese. And in the past 30 years, this global prevalence of diabetes has nearly doubled, which is very scary. Next slide, please. And part of this reason is the stress. And so I really want to make sure that you know that you can do everything right, but you also have to make sure you're managing your stress. One of the things that I realized a long time ago, I would say, maybe a decade ago, is that uncontrolled sleep also leads to things like sleep apnea, diabetes, arrhythmias. And so all of my patients get screened for sleep disorder because it also increases your risk of diabetes and cortisol problems and things like that. So these trends in the US, diet versus ACLM and Canadian standards, we're going to talk about how Canada was really a rock star. Next slide, please. So this was what Canada showed up and said, listen, this is what we are going to say for our country. This is what we think plates should look like. And if you look, it's very colorful. It's very real food, mostly real food, right? That is grown and not processed. And I say mostly because there's a piece of bread on there that's processed a little bit, but it's still a whole grain. And so when we're thinking about food, we're thinking about this plate, maybe using meat as a condiment instead of meat as half the plate being a steak and a baked potato and corn, right? And that's kind of the way I was taught growing up. We only ate food from green beans, peas, and corn from a can. That was all I was taught. I also ate TV dinners. My mom gave me whatever. But when we're talking to people about food, could we just use this plate and say, would you consider eating less meat and maybe more plant-based proteins? And we're going to talk about what that looks like. Next slide, please. And as we look at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's plate, we see that this is really the whole food plant-based plate. And I like to show this, but also say, like, I don't ever tell anybody you have to be whole food plant exclusive, because I think the minute we start to tell everybody that we have to restrict things is the minute we lose people. We need to tell people all the things they can have and not what they can't. And so as we move forward, go ahead, next slide, please. We'll talk more about this, but why we're doing this is because chronic disease in America is huge. 6 in 10 adults in the United States have chronic disease, and 4 in 10 have 2 or more. So this is a problem. We look at these diseases like heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, chronic kidney disease. These are all lifestyle diseases. And so we can prevent these and we can reverse these. And that's what we need to know. So we want to talk to our patients about, substance use and mindful substance use. I don't like the word, they use risky substances. I don't really love that word because I think it points the finger and it makes people not open up to talking. I like to talk about mindful eating. I like to talk about mindful substance use, mindful movement. Some people, the word exercise is triggering or jarring for them. So I really just talk about like what feels right in your body and what could we maybe make 1 or 2 sustainable changes. Next slide, please. And so the average restaurant meal today is more than 4 times larger than that in the 1950s. Look at that. What a change, right? Next slide, please. And so I give these next couple slides and we'll breeze through them pretty quickly, but look at the prevalence of overweight and obesity in children under 5 years old. It is startling. I'm giving a talk tomorrow to Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and this is something that we will talk about because, we have to figure out how to help these kids and create this healthy relationship with children as we start. I actually am very involved with the Dr. Yum Project. If you're not familiar with that, please look into it. They have tons of free resources where we really start to teach children at the Head Start level, as well as bring families in and curriculum for families. So I think that there's so many resources out there. We just all really need to come together and see how we could utilize them. And again, that's why I'm so excited to be part of NWI. Next slide, please. So when we look at the prevalence of overweight and obesity in children 5 to 19 years old, we see that it's definitely climbing. Next slide, please. And also obesity in adults is climbing, right? Men more than women, but it's definitely climbing. And it's something that doesn't have to be. I think lack of education and awareness and lack of people that can be supportive in this arena for them is the reason why. Next slide, please. Again, we need to approach these things with gentleness and kindness, just like we did in our breathing earlier on. So when you look at the main factors contributing to disease, the highest proportion of cardiometabolic disease was estimated to be related to excess sodium intake, right? controllable. Insufficient intake of nuts and seeds. Can we get our people to just eat a few more nuts and seeds? Can we avoid high intake of processed meats? That's a real problem. Can we lower, with a low intake of seafood and omega-3 fats, we see that that can contribute to some of the cardiometabolic problems. We want to encourage, again, more towards the Mediterranean diet. We'll talk about that in the future. And this high intake of sugar beverages. Remember, next slide, please. Just as we take away sugar, if we say, how about we switch to LaCroix water instead of our soda water, that's a win. So we don't need it to be a big thing. We just need it to be one little thing that they leave with. And again, not we're going to take away your salt, we're going to take away your meat, and we're going to take away your soda, and we're going to, do all these things. We really just want to try to move the needle a little bit in the direction of being more nutritarian. And we're going to talk about that too. So these food groups and risk of overweight, obesity, and weight gain this is just a study looking at a systematic review and dose response meta-analysis of prospective studies. Next slide, please. So this is science heavy in a lot of these, but one of the things that what we look at here is that the more whole grains we eat, the healthier we are. The more refined grains we eat, the less healthier we are. We don't want foods to be processed. We want to try to, and again, when I'm talking to patients, I say, can we just think about eating food in its realistic form? Next slide, please. What we talk about is if the person eats toast and jelly for breakfast or toast and peanut butter, let's use that as an example. I say, could we just maybe consider an apple with an almond butter? Like, could we move the needle just a little bit in that direction? Could we do overnight oats instead, with more of a plant-based milk instead of an animal-based milk? And, starting to, again, think about the food choices and the nutrient that we're getting in those meals. So again, looking at the lower the amount of vegetables, the more obese the patients were. The lower amount of fruit, again, were these patients, go ahead, next slide, please. What we're seeing is people that are not eating real food have more disease processes. So with this, more red meat is increasing our risk of obesity. Next slide, please. And again, as we move through this, next slide, please. The other direction. Yeah. As we move through this, one of the things that we start to look at is the different types of diets. And again, remember I said I don't like the word diet. I don't like to judge people and like put a label on people. But what we see with this slide is vegan versus vegetarian, pesco, semi-vegetarian, as well as omnivore. And when we introduce any of these different plant-based diets or plant-strong diets, what we see is that over time, over a 6-month period, we definitely see weight loss and improvement in dietary patterns. So again, just getting the person to, next slide, please, move in the direction of eating real food. So issues with common diet trends, we're going to look at low carb versus high carb diets, ketogenic diets, and the myths about fat. Next slide, please. And again, the reason we're doing some of these things really is to make sure that we are creating sustainable change and we're not doing things that a person can't live with forever. So issues with common diet trends, what we see in this slide actually is a meta-analysis of all cohorts. Both low carbohydrate consumption and high carbohydrate consumption conferred a greater mortality risk than did moderate intake. And again, we want moderate intake. We think that that is more sustainable. Next slide, please. As we're looking at this next slide, what we're looking at is mortality increased when carbohydrates were exchanged for animal-derived fat or protein, and mortality decreased when those substitutions were more of a plant-based. Next slide, please. So when we're moving towards this, again, we're just thinking about eating more plant-strong, plant-based, real food, less processed food, less refined foods. So in keto, one of the problems with keto, I will agree, keto patients lose weight. I will agree, but it's not sustainable. So they come off and they regain the weight. And one of the problems that they have is they will show up with increased inflammatory markers, higher C-reactive protein, that they will have higher cholesterol. And so what we want over time really is to create a diet or a lifestyle or a food plan, a food program for our patients that they can live with forever. And so next slide, please. When we look at fats, if we just decrease the saturated fat and move towards more monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat, we see that we have a 27% and 13% estimated reduction in total mortality. So again, just trying to eat more avocado and seafood and nuts and things like that would be beneficial instead of steak and cheese and butter and stuff like that. So next slide, please. And with red meat consumption, we see this result from 2 prospective cohort studies that the conclusion was red meat consumption was associated with an increased risk of total cardiovascular disease and cancer mortality, and substitution of other healthy protein sources for red meat is associated with a lower mortality. Next slide, please. So remember, as you're talking to your patients, meat as a condiment, not as the whole side of your plate. Diets that support healthy lifestyles. So vegetarian versus vegan versus Mediterranean. So next slide, please. We're going to talk about what I land with all the time is nutritarian. So again, when we're looking at these slides, we're just really looking at, vegetarian. These diets are associated with a lower all-cause mortality and cause-specific mortality. Results appear to be more robust in males. Vegans on average are 30 pounds lighter than meat eaters. Vegans and vegetarians are less insulin resistant than meat eaters. And pesco-vegetarians and semi-vegetarians, they have an intermediate protection against lifestyle diseases. Next slide, please. So again, even the pesco-vegetarians, we're trying to get them to move the needle more towards eating seafood rather than the animal products. Vegetarian versus vegan diet. So this finding showed effectiveness as plant-based diet and promoting well-being in patients. And what we noticed is the healthier they ate, the better their well-being was. I want to go back for just 1 second, just so everybody can see that visual. And so the reason why I think this is really important is because we have a whole new field of nutritional psychiatry. If you do not know about nutritional psychiatry, dig in, because it is fantastic for patients when they start to learn that their food matters. Even if we just increase blueberries in their diet is great for brain health, and they feel a sense of, more well-being. Next slide, please. So where do we land? Look at this slide. Really, if you just said to your patients, can you eat 8 to 10 daily servings of fruits and vegetables a day? This is what I share with my physicians when I'm doing a Doctors in the Kitchen. When we look at this food pyramid, this is one of the best food pyramids that I think is out there for creating sustainable change. You're not telling patients they can't have any of these things. You're just saying do it in moderation. That's okay. Go ahead. Next slide, please. And so conclusions, really the incidence of major cardiovascular events was lower in 30% among those assigned to a Mediterranean diet that supplemented with extra virgin olive oil or nuts than those assigned to a reduced fat diet. So Mediterranean diet and the science wins every single time. I've not seen, and if you can show me that another diet wins over Mediterranean, I'm happy to see that science. Next slide, please. And again, everything I talk about is the science behind all of this, right? And so this slide, oh my gosh, put this in your memory. Take a photo of this, carry this around with you. The reason this slide is so important to me is because physicians, I actually have Dr. Michelle Thompson Facebook page. If you go on there, I posted something today that was like a yes about another physician said. In the medical world, we learn if a patient is constipated, give them this for their bowels. If a person has low magnesium, I'm getting calls in the middle of the night when they're in the ICU to replace it with, we replace the magnesium. If they have a potassium deficiency for their blood pressure medication, we're replacing the potassium with an oral pill that they can't swallow because it's way too big. If they have microbiome dysbiosis, we're telling people to take a probiotic supplementation. If they have osteoporosis, we're telling them that they need to go on a medication for their osteoporosis. So if we look at all these different disease processes, we see that there really is a food base that can help all of these different things. And so we're going to move through this pretty quickly, but all of my patients that have constipation, I have a food list for that. Magnesium, a food list for that. Please reach out to me if you want any of these lists that I have created in PDF form. I'm happy to give them to you. You'll have all my information at the end. I'm also on Instagram. It's MTYOGI doc, MTYogi doc. And my website is fullheartedmedicine.org. But these are all created really because I want to give people power. If they get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or depression or anxiety or low potassium or their microbiome is off because they had to take an antibiotic because they were bit by a tick, we can fix this with foods. Next slide, please. So we're going to run through these next slides pretty quickly, but there are food lists available for all of these different things. Next slide, please. Iron. So how many times have you heard a person come back and say, my doctor said I need to take an iron pill? What happens when you take an iron pill? You get an upset stomach, you get constipation, you get bloating, you don't feel good. Or I have cardiologists still telling my patients, go eat meat. And that's not true. If you look at this food list, if patients eat these foods, they actually feel good when they eat these foods. And we can incorporate them into little things like smoothies, nourish bowls, healthy salads, stuff like that, snacks, just that are easy peasy, grab and go. And so next slide, please. So rather than telling our patients they need to take a pill, we tell them to eat food. Food is medicine, right? Food is information and food is fuel. So again, a lot of patients are on medications that cause the potassium to be depleted. These are foods that can actually improve your potassium. And most of the time people know about a banana, but they don't know about avocado, and they don't know about the certain vegetables, mushrooms, baked potatoes, different foods that can improve your potassium. Next slide, please. Calcium is a huge one. So my patients that come back that are diagnosed with osteopenia or osteoporosis, they automatically want to put them on medication. What do? I say, I want you to do a plant-based calcium diet lifestyle. I want you to be, doing weight-bearing exercise and core stability training, because we want their muscles to be strong to protect their bones, and we want them to be on plant-based calcium, because one thing we learned over time, plant-based calcium actually absorbs way better than animal-based calcium. And if you look at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine's article on osteoporosis, it's huge for talking about that animal-based calcium can pull calcium out of the bones. When we give a plant-based calcium, it absorbs much better. And when we do, we can implement these sustainable changes on a daily basis. I'm currently sitting on a core stability ball. So if you can see me, I'm bouncing around. So what am I doing? I'm sitting here, I'm doing a lecture, I'm working on my core, and I'm working on my balance. Sometimes I walk around with weights on my ankles or on my hands, gloved weights if I'm putting things around the house, going grocery shopping, going for a walk. These are ways that we can help our patients. Next slide, please. And some patients do need medication, by the way. So I'm not an anti-medicine doctor completely, but what I'm trying to do is teach you that there are other ways, and food first always is really important, and or in addition to what the doctor recommends. Magnesium, another really big one. Magnesium is important for your muscles. Your heart is a muscle. So magnesium really should be good in patients to protect their heart. It helps with arrhythmias, it helps with headaches, a lot of hormonal disruptions, patients with premenstrual dysphoric disorder or cramping around their periods. This is a lot of times why women crave chocolate around that time. Eat the chocolate, your body's telling you something. Eat some dark chocolate, eat some foods with magnesium. So anybody that has migraine headaches or, period issues, I tell them, let's try this. And then sometimes I check levels. My goal level is 2.2, by the way. So it's not the standard lab level. Next slide, please. And my goal potassium level is 4.0. Nitric oxide is another big one. We've seen runners actually, people that are training for running, like Boston Marathon, things like that, they focus on nitric oxide rich. Consider eating nitric oxide foods. For men, especially, one of the things that I say to them is think about if you have erectile dysfunction, adding in these foods, because this can actually help with erections. Why? Because it's a vessel going to, a periphery, and it increases oxygenation, and it also helps to reduce plaques that may already be within those vessels. Why? Because the blood is going stronger, harder, faster, and it starts to check away, kind of like Drano works. So think about that. Next slide, please. So where should we get our protein? A lot of patients say, well, I have to get my protein through meat. Well, if we look at this slide, soybeans contain protein, peanuts contain protein, almonds, cashews, quinoa, egg whites, and then some of them are even comparable to chicken, pork, and beef. So just teach the person where they can get it from and what is the best way to get it into their diet. Next slide, please. And so another visual, and you guys have all of this. So again, a lot of times patients are visual. And I say, like, listen, have you eaten any of these things today? Can you put these in a nourished bowl? Can you put these in your smoothie? Can you just have these in a snack? These are some of the protein rich nuts and seeds. Great snack to have in the car, in the glove box, right? Never goes bad because of the weather. If it's too hot, too cold, you have something instead of stopping at fast food. Next slide, please. Increasing your plant-based protein, again, legumes. So this is really fast. So for people that live alone and they don't want to cook a great big meal, open a can of beans, rinse the beans, and there you have some protein. Next slide, please. And or freezer beans. For foods that support hormone balance. So I did a whole webinar on menopause. I will just send you to my wholeheartedmedicine.org website and look at the menopause webinar. The reason this is so important to me is last week, I think, the New York Times put out an article talking about menopause in women, and they said absolutely nothing about diet, exercise, and lifestyle changes or anything like this. So I was actually, I sit on the board of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Women's Health Menopause Subcommittee. I oversee that committee. And I was asked to do a rebuttal letter, essentially saying women have choices of ways that they can move through menopause healthier than just grabbing a pill first and foremost. And so we need to think about this. These are foods we can just add into our diet every day that can help. I have food lists for foods that heat you up, foods that cool you down, things like that. Next slide, please. So when we look at, again, our immune system, foods that support our immune system, we learned this in COVID-19. Patients that ate, and I did a webinar for GoPivot, and I think that there's some GoPivot people here, but one thing, and we can, that's what I think listed on my website as well, that whole webinar on foods to support your immune system, but foods that are high in vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, quercetin, pre and probiotics. Next slide, please. We're gonna just show you quickly what some of these foods look like. These are foods that support your immune system that provide you with vitamin A. Next slide, please. We're just going to run through these pretty quickly. Foods that support your immune system with vitamin C. You don't have to have a vitamin C packet or take a vitamin C pill. How about you just eat this? Or how about you just squeeze a lemon or a lime or grapefruit or an orange into your water? We all need to drink water, right? Next slide, please. And so if Julie Palmer is on here, she's one of my best friends and she is with GoPivot. And so, you know, she's the one that asked me to do this webinar in the past. And so, you know, during that time where patients felt like such a lack of control, this was one way we could give them a sense of control. Because again, remember, we're not in control of a lot of things that are out there in the world, but we are in control of our fork. And our food should matter. So zinc, these are foods that are high in zinc. Next slide, please. We do have a ton of zinc deficiency in the world, by the way, because of the soil being depleted. Quercetin. Quercetin is high in apples. And so, you know, the whole saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. There's some truth to that. Next slide, please. So foods that support the immune system, again, probiotics and prebiotics are really important. So am I anti-probiotic pill? No. But what do I want to do first and foremost? Bugs and critters can be good for our microbiome. If you're going through the aisle with all the things in a box in a package, there's no bugs and critters in that. So obviously it's not going to be helping our microbiome, which is again why real food should be eaten instead of processed packaged food. So again, thinking of prebiotic, probiotic, next slide, please. We really want to do that first and foremost. And fiber, 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 fiber. Even if you just get your patient to eat fiber, you're doing a great job. Next slide, please. There's a whole book called Fiber Fueled, by the way. Will Bulowitz is one of my colleagues. He is an amazing, it's right here. Not intended to tell you about it, but I have all my books lined up. But Fiber Fueled is a great book that actually helps talking about rebuilding the microbiome. So again, what do we do? Just eat the rainbow. I tell people, look at your plate. Do you need some more color? Should you throw some blueberries? Should you throw some, you know, red? Are you missing some purple? Like, just think color, right? What can you add? Next slide, please. Again, we looked at this earlier. This is just the plant-based plate. Next slide, please. Getting people to add herbs is also important. Thinking about your meal as a power plate. Your plate should be a quarter fruit, quarter vegetable, quarter grain, quarter protein. Try to focus on the plant-based proteins. Try to think of all the things you can eat and not that you can't. Next slide, please. And again, the daily dozen. This is so powerful. So there's an app for it. You can actually get this app. You can give it to others, and it's little check boxes. Did you eat your beans today? Did you eat something red? Did you eat something blue? Did you eat something green? Did you exercise? Did you drink your water? Did you add some spices? What are we trying to do for patients for longevity, disease prevention, disease reversal? Increase their nutritional profile. And so one of the things I have actually implemented, and you can see this in some of my webinars and podcasts I talk about, is I took a masala daba tray and actually put 7 different things in that tray so I can quickly grab it out of my own cupboard. I didn't bring it with me today to like put these 7 different things to increase my own nutritional profile very quickly, because I don't have time to go grab seven different boxes out of the cupboard and try to get nuts and seeds and chia and flax and you know, nutritional yeast and all those different things. But if it's right there in the little masala daba spice tray, which is an Indian spice tray, it's a great grab and go. And so that you can use that pretty quickly. Next slide, please. And you can change it and put whatever makes sense to you. Again, how you can get started on a plant-based diet. You'll have this, you know, being prepared to succeed is also so important. You know, having everything ready to go, meal prepping, doing your overnight oats, doing your healthy salads and mason jars. I have lots of videos on my Facebook page that you can go to and just look at making, making different things, a kale salad very quickly. Like, people just don't know what to do with this stuff. Go ahead, next slide, please. One of the things we're working on at UPMC really is when people get their food box for, when they sign up to get a food box from the community, it's teaching them what to do with it, because they really don't know what to do with it. And so we're working on programs for the whole family, the grandma and the mom and the child, or the dads, or whoever's involved in the family. And so with this, mindful eating. So again, we talked about using our breath. So grounding yourself before you eat, thinking about the what, where, when, why, how we are eating. And even if you don't have much time, you actually can center yourself. I did a whole podcast on mindful eating. It's there for you to listen to. It's on my website. But maybe just coming into the moment. My husband and I do dark dining. We'll have a dark dining date where we get everything prepared on the table. We shut off all the lights, and then we eat with our fingers, and we have everything we need. And it makes the conversation richer. It makes the taste better. It makes everything, all of your other senses are heightened. So mindfulness and everything is really beneficial. And so if you have something in this moment, if you can grab something that maybe a little blueberry or a blackberry, I really just have my tea, but thinking about, as you come into this moment, thinking about what it is that you may have in front of you, and how it got to you. Thinking about the history of it, thinking about how it was grown, how it was made, how it was transported, how it got to the store. Are there any sounds associated with what you have? Is there a wrapper of something you're opening? Is there any scent of something? Maybe you have a berry that smells very rich. I did a grape once, right off the grapevine. I had a group of physicians in a vineyard, and we did, grapes, and it was the best grape I've ever had. Thinking about the site, looking at it, and then putting it to your lips. Maybe taking a bite or a sip of your tea or something, and really just thinking about how that's going to go into your body and how that's going to nourish you. Thinking about your digestive system, thinking about why we eat. Maybe taking some deep breaths. Really just being present in this moment with whatever it is that you have in front of you. Utilizing all of your senses. Thinking about the teeth that you use to chew, moving things around in your mouth, just slowing down and being present with your food. There's a lot of history in food. There's a lot of people that it takes to get that food to us, the farmers that grow it, the people that check it out at the grocery store, the person that does your shopping for you. If you have the shopping, that you pick up the order, getting it to you, all of those things. And all of those things are really powerful. When you come into that space, you have much more gratitude associated with your food. And so really, I think in our country, everything is so fast paced. One of the things my husband and I do, will actually take some deep breaths together. We'll hold hands, and we will come into the moment. We will, talk about what we're grateful for. We have a gratitude bell on our table, and we really breathe together before we begin to eat. Setting down your fork in between bites, making smaller plates, doing the dark dining, just really being present, digital free, spaces. So next slide, please. So the thing about mindful eating is there's no rules, there's no guidelines. It's really an individual experience. There's a lot of science behind this, and there's a lot of evidence that supports that it contributes to weight loss and maintenance. It improves our digestion. A lot of times people that just have irritable bowel or GERD, heartburn, they just need to slow down. Contributing to positive behavioral change. And again, more mindfulness in the eating. They may not pick up that potato chip, or if they love the potato chip, I say, eat that potato chip so mindfully. Really enjoy that potato chip. I even catch my own self throwing a couple pistachios in my mouth, but I try to put it in a dish, eat one by one. I really do. My husband always teases, if I have to take my blueberry and chew it 25 times, Michelle, I'm never going to get to work in the day. Next slide, please. But again, really just being present with your food. And this is when we're talking about activating, maintaining sustainable, healthy life habits through nutrition, we have control. We need to really teach people that. We know our healthcare system is broken. We're really trying to move it more towards well care instead of sick care. We want to motivate these individuals that we work with our families. We want to encourage whole food, plant-based and plant-strong diets that limit animal products so that we can leverage, not only leverage wellness, but also decrease mortality. Next slide. So food for thought, slow but sustained change is the easiest way to change our dietary patterns, one meal, one bite at a time. We are in control of our fork. It could be our biggest weapon of mass destruction or our best, weapon against disease in the world. Most importantly, consider the how, what, where, when, why. Think about why people are doing it. Sometimes that cookie means love. And so maybe they just need something, something that gives them love instead. Think finding a certified nutrition professional when necessary to stay within their scope of practice if working with others. Again, it's really important. Next slide, please, that we have people to support and to also inspire and empower. So with that, I know that I didn't leave much time for questions. Suzanne? This is the way you can reach me through the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. There's my email address. I gave you my handles, MT Yogi Doc on Instagram, Dr. Michelle Thompson on Facebook. My goal really is to create these sustainable changes throughout our world. And I do that not alone, but with you as our team, as our army of people that are really trying to get out there and do this work. So, congratulate yourself, look in the mirror, say, I'm doing great stuff, and I want to just go out there and keep going and help these people, really demand the change that we know that needs to happen in the world.
Thank you so much for your time today. And everyone, we appreciate you sticking around. If you want to stick around and hear more questions and answers from Michelle, you can. Like I mentioned before, as long as you're on for the full duration, which is this of the webinar, you can receive your CEC still. There are a lot of questions, and I'm only going to ask a few because there were some really, really, really specific questions that I feel like they should reach directly out to you about. I want to ask a few of the more broad questions right now for those that are on here with us still. And one is, what foods would you recommend for people with autoimmune diseases, including things like celiac disease, Hashimoto's, things of that nature?
Okay, so a little different each one. So celiac disease, I think Fiber Fueled, the book that I talked about, is a great source. Autoimmune disease, Body on Fire is another really fantastic book. There's a movie called Code Blue, which is also really powerful for MS, associated with MS. Hashimoto's Root Cause Thyroid is the name of the book that is supported around thyroid. And so true, all these disease processes, food is really powerful associated with all of it. Next slide, or next question, sorry. And copy the chat, Suzanne, because if there is a way that I can answer questions, I'm happy to do it later.
Okay. Another question is, for wellness professionals who are not clinicians but want to add knowledge around this area, what programs would you recommend to add credibility? This person does specific health lectures and they are thinking about additional certifications.
American College of Lifestyle Medicine is now offering 5.5 free CME in food as medicine, as well as intro to lifestyle medicine. And so if you cannot figure out how to obtain that 5.5 free CME, let me know and I'll figure out how to get that to you. And I also will try to put that on my LinkedIn. I just haven't gotten to that yet. There's a couple of reasons why. We have a UPMC code and then we have an outside code. So I'm trying to track our UPMC one because we actually put it in the center of our ULearn and our, employee health. So we're trying to see who all is doing it in our system. But yeah, that's a great place to go to just get, more information, and it's all evidence science-based.
Somebody just asked about the books that you recommended. I am doing about 5,000 things, so I don't know, and I have not put that in the chat, so we can ask her to repeat those in a minute if we need to. There are some movies that were listed as well. I am managing about 7 chats right now, so I appreciate your patience.
Oh, wow.
So I am also trying to look at about 5 different questions over here too. So let's see.
You look at them and organize yourself, and let me just say a few more things. First of all, Forks Over Knives is a great movie. Forks Over Knives. That's a good one. Fiber Fueled is the name of the book that I was recommending, and it's Will Bulowitz, Bulsiewicz. And probably I'm saying poor Will's name wrong, but it's a little bit of a difficult name for me to say. Root Cause Thyroid is the thyroid book. Body on Fire was the other book. I talked about Code Blue, the movie. And I think that was all that I said. Thank you for whoever's putting things in the chat.
Yes, thank you.
Again, it takes an army. Thank you guys for being like on the team.
Okay, I have a few more questions, and then let's see. So what is an example of how to get people to apply mindful eating when their schedule doesn't allow for time to make a lot of food? So again, prepping food on a Sunday is always powerful. So the other thing I wanted to say is you can reach out to somebody. We have a guy in our town who's a very good friend of mine. His name is Gino West, Prepped Wellness. Check out that site because he prepares whole food plant-based meals that people can get 5 meals for $40. So I tell people, like, if you can't, like, you're gonna not get any meal for, that inexpensive. But if you have those meals, you actually can be prepared, right? And so you can have that if you don't have time to do it yourself. So that's an excellent question. It was on my list of things I wanted to talk about and I just forgot. But if you don't know a service like that around you, encourage somebody in your team to make one, because that will be very helpful for your community to have that. Okay, a few more. Someone asked, do you currently prescribe medications for blood pressure and cholesterol? And if so, how long do you work with someone before you prescribe?
Oh, I love that question. So yes, I prescribe all medications, including medication for substance use. And so what I really try to do is do everything without medication first and foremost. And so it really just depends. I have a whole webinar on hypertension. So you can access that. I think it's on my website. And it is something that I did specifically for UPMC health plan patients. There were thousands of people on that. We just talk about all the lifestyle changes. Sometimes we need medication for things, for depression, anxiety, even to get people like willing to make changes. And so I'm not anti-medication. Sometimes we need medication for heartburn and reflux just to get things to settle down. I use papaya enzyme, ginger root. I use a lot of herbs in my practice. I use marshmallow root is another good one for heartburn, but nothing is forever. Hyperlipidemia patients, high cholesterol. I really try to decrease the animal products, the white sugar, white flour, without using medication. I've gotten patients off of 27 different pills and onto none. Gotten patients with A1Cs from 15 down to normal and off all meds. So I'm really considered a deprescribing specialist. It's what I do. I love to backpedal off medications. I'm actually part of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine program that we're trying to put together now for deprescribing, to actually have a standard of care, because it's kind of, not everybody knows how to do it. Canada actually has a deprescribing guide that is out there. I've not really looked at it myself, but I know, again, Canada's doing great things. I hope that helps. But yes, I'm not an anti-medicine person. I think that there's a time and a place, but I think everybody should be offered an alternative first.
Great. Someone is asking a question about using the courses for National Board Health and Wellness Coaching Recertification. They recently restructured their certification. I will respond back to you in the chat, but you have to individually submit those to National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching with your individual CECs for attending. I know they're not making that super easy for you, so my apologies, but I will give you my information momentarily. And then someone also asked about, keto for children with epilepsy, but which we know is one of the reasons why that diet was founded for them. And so she's asking that her 3-year-old grandson has this issue, and their doctor is considering keto for him, but she has some concerns around, the keto diet, since it seems to increase inflammation. And she wanted to know your thoughts on that.
So keto diet works for epilepsy 100%. My previous partner, Dr. Deborah Snyder, wrote a book called Keto Kid. And so keto can definitely reduce seizures. So I am not anti-keto for that reason. Again, it's not sustainable for life. So the reason when we're talking about sustainable change, I don't want a person to have to live on keto. But one of the things that happens with seizures is once we use a keto diet and we get the person controlled with the seizures, we may be able to reintroduce the foods as we go and watch to see if the seizures recur. So I hope that helps. It's a whole different conversation that we can have. But yes, I'm in favor of keto for seizures.
Let's see, we have a few more, and then I think we're gonna have to hop off here. So another one is, let's see, Caitlin, the Mediterranean food pyramid is in the PDF. It's, and I know we're getting used to this. It is, and Kim, I can't see an image that you submitted. Heavens. We are really blown up here, which is a good thing. So if you are literally in live in LearnWell, which is what you're physically in to have to see this webinar, there's a page that you're on that says live webinar, and you had to click a button to get here. On the page, it says live webinar, activation of sustainable change. There's a document that says overview, and it says ready to join us. Here's the title. There's 2 tabs. There's another tab that says resources. And when you click it, there's the link for the PDF to this, which also includes the Mediterranean food pyramid. And so you'll be able to see that. And then I think you were not going to be able to access the CEC option quite yet. I've got to end the Zoom because since we're like 10 minutes over. So I'm sorry, everybody, for your 5,000 tech questions here. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that. But we have a few more questions that are specific that actually, Michelle, I think I'm going to send directly to you. One is specifically about processed plant-based milk substitutes. And, you know, is that
it's always,
beneficial
it's no,
compared to
I'll just actually say it's always best
Okay.
to make it yourself. I mean, you could just take cashews, blend it down and make cashew milk quickly. But again, you're trying to cater to people who aren't going to really do a lot of the things that you're telling them. And yes, of course, that would be the way that I would want to go. But again, you know, you're just trying to get them to move in the needle of trying to get plants or get, you know, more plants into their diet. So you're planting a seed, right, for these people to just make these little bit of changes. And then once they get to that change and they make the little change, they'll make another change. And so they may find over time they really like to make it themselves. I always tell people also make a journal, like keep a journal and see what have you done well and what are your struggles. What I celebrate successes all the time. I think that's really important to celebrate successes and not always look at, I look at the glass half full instead of glass half empty, right? What are we doing well? Because that's where that's where we're going to fuel more change.
All right, there's a last question I'm going to ask, then we're going to end. And I encourage everyone to reach out to Michelle because she's amazing and has all the resources that she talked about with her Instagram and also her website, which includes a lot of the things that she's talked about today. The last question I'll read is, what resources would you provide for people who are experiencing depression and anxiety?
Oh, good question. So I'll start. I want to say one more thing too. Disease runs in families because food runs in families, recipes run in families, stress runs in families. The way we do things is the way our family did things. So what we're trying to do is to break some of these patterns that are instilled in patients. And so Dr. Drew Ramsey wrote the book, Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. If somebody could put that in the chat for everybody, Eat to Beat Depression and Anxiety. Dr. Drew Ramsey, he's a nutritional psychiatrist out of New York City, and he has a great Instagram. He's really active on Instagram. He has a whole program that he put together on nutritional psychiatry for patients. So, you know, what we're trying really to do is to create these programs for all disease processes so people know, you know, how to, oh, I have this and I'll go this route. One of the things we're doing at UPMC is creating group medical visits around different disease processes. We're doing group medical visits we're trying to put in for geriatric patients, substance use, menopause, metabolic disease, you know, GI problems, anything you can think about. We're trying to put in group medical visits because hypermobility syndrome, because the support of the group is also really powerful for people so that they see they're not alone. If I show up, I didn't even tell you my history, but if I show up and I just say to do this, they don't even know where I came from. They don't realize that I had to make all these changes myself in my own life. Nobody taught me how to do this, right? But when they have other patients, and that's the other thing, have your champions in the room, have your people. I know Go Pivot, I think, is one of the places that had like people show up into their spaces to tell their story. People's stories matter, right? Like they really matter. And so I have patients that show up to tell their story because they learn from a person that's a person like them. So, you know, just doing little things, creating these pantry resets, thinking about the environmental changes, finding in brown people of color, there's the Minister of Wellness is somebody who is out there that is really helping people of color create cultural changes in food, because we want to change the recipes that run in families, because that's why the disease is running in families. There was recently just a talk by Chef Babbitt, Babbett, that was really great talk about her making change and being a chef for creating whole food plant-based a restaurant for people to come into, kind of soul food like, because we want to be able to, I'm Italian, so I'm trying to change all my Italian recipes, which don't really always taste the same, but still we have to change the culture around the food too. So I hope that helps, so that we can find the joy in food and learn to love the food that loves us back. I think that's, important.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience with our technology and everything today. And I appreciate your time. If you have additional questions, please follow up with Michelle directly. When I end this webinar, you'll be able to see the information to get your CECs and attendance in there. And again, you can find the PDF of all the things that Michelle talked about today for these slides in LearnWell, which is our learning center under the resources tab when you click on this actual live webinar event. All right, so we're going to wrap up for today. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for being so involved and engaging and amazing in the chat, which is exactly what I told Michelle to expect from you all. So thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.